I cover the Nordics region and the Benelux region, working together with Exclusive and the partners for Proofpoint. So today, as Malin mentioned, we're going to talk about some integration points that we have between Proofpoint and Palo Alto. So I will start by sharing my screen here and making sure that we have the presentation running, and I hope you can see this. Better together, Proofpoint and Palo Alto networks.
Yes.
So, good. All right. So many of you might have seen this before, but I'm still going to show you this slide. And this talks pretty much about how we have been looking at security for many years now. We have been looking at the perimeter, and which is protecting the internal networks and resources that we have inside our environments. But attackers have more and more started using different ways of attacking an infrastructure in various different ways. And when we talk about the infrastructure, we can actually talk about the users as well, because especially when we talk about email is a communication vector that shows you that even if you have your firewalls, your IPSs, your proxies, and everything around there, communication still needs to go over email today, because it's the primary communication vector for most organizations. So an email requires basically a different type of thinking when we are talking about protection of the infrastructure, because at the end, what it means is that the user becomes like the last line of defense when the email is hitting the user inbox. And those attacks can come through various different ways. They can come directly, or they can come through the supply chain, or from third parties and so on coming in. But still, at the end, it reaches the user inbox. So we need to have a layered type of defense. And we have been talking about a platform for quite some time. But what we're talking about today is rather focusing on building out an ecosystem, utilizing different types of security solutions that exists in the customer environment. Because I mean, obviously, not everybody is only using Proofpoint. I wonder why, but they are not. So we have many different ways of doing this. So one example here is when we talk about from our side with the email protection part. If we look at the mail flow, we have the traditional type of filtering that most people are thinking about when talking about email protection, and that is the light blue part we see here on this screen. And that's where the majority of everything gets stopped from our perspective. But then we have the more sophisticated threats that require some further investigation with our TAP sandboxing part. So those targeted threats in the dark blue area here, this is where we do attachment detonation. We send them to the sandbox, and they will be scanned for different types of code and behaviors and many different things in there. And also URLs that we are sandboxing, and we have both predictive sandboxing and click time sandboxing and so on. And then finally at the end, then we hopefully have managed to capture whatever threat there might be in there, and only deliver those clean emails to the mail store, the user mailboxes. So when we are doing this, we are doing it slightly differently than many others are doing. So we look at something what we like to call VAPs, or VAPs. That is an abbreviation for very attacked people. So basically what we're looking at, we look at who is likely to fall for an attack. We can correlate this information in various different ways, but one of the most important ones is we look at the volume of attacks that are coming to each user in the environment. And we look at those attacks, how sophisticated they are, and what types of attacks and who are the threat actors, if we can correlate that information as well. We also correlate that with the user's privilege levels. So if they have higher privilege levels, they might expose a greater risk to the organization as well. And so on. So we use this, we capture all this information and we calculate a risk score for the protection. And this is based on each and every user in the organization. And how can we do that? Well, one of the reasons we can do that is because of the vast amount of information that we have around email. So Proofpoint is the most deployed solution in all of the major companies around the globe. And we are present on a huge number of customers, but also on the largest global ISPs. And all of these business emails that we see every day, we can capture information and we pull that information, all the metadata that we have around that email traffic and those traffic stats that we see, that is being fed back into the data lake that we have within TAP. So TAP becomes like a critical point of intelligence that feeds many different solutions in our platform. But not only in our platform, because it feeds other solutions as well. So in this case today, we're talking about Palo Alto, but we feed this information also to CrowdStrike, Okta, SailPoint, CyberArk, and so on in various different ways. The interesting thing here now with this integration with Palo Alto is that if you have, as a customer, a Palo Alto firewall, and you have the license for the Wildfire sandbox, we can integrate this quite easily. So whenever an email is coming in and being filtered through our email gateway, and we send it off, when an attachment needs to be analyzed, we send it off to our TAP Cloud sandboxing, but we also send it off to Palo Alto, to the Wildfire sandbox. So that means you will have two points for verdicts of that attachment, which might see different type of information based on the fact what the threat intelligence those respective sandbox boxes has. So this is a quite neat feature. And how does this work? Well, it's quite easy, frankly. So the email comes in. You can see it here on the left-hand side. This email that we're looking at now, it has an attachment, or a bilaga in Swedish. It hits the SEG, the Secure Email Gateway. We do the filtering, the traditional type of filtering that I showed you initially here, with all spam filtering. We look for imposters and so on, and different types of filterings that we do. We have several different engines within the gateway. But if we still are not sure about the level of maliciousness of this attachment, we send it off to TAP for sandboxing, where we analyze it. And we also then at the same time send it off to the Wildfire sandbox. So those two sandboxes become integrated at one point in this scenario. So we're waiting for the verdicts from those sandboxes to say if this is malicious or not. And it's being fed back to the email gateway. And based on the verdict, the email gateway will then deliver this to the user mailbox, or we will quarantine that email. And all of this information that we have captured, even from the Wildfire sandbox, will be fed back to TAP, and we will aggregate that data together with that particular threat. So it is quite clear and visible that this might have been condemned from the Wildfire sandbox and not from our sandbox. So this is a very useful feature, because when we talk about threat intelligence, it's quite important to have intelligence from different types of sources, because they might see different types of threats targeting the environment. Setting this up is very easy, extremely easy, I would say. It's just a simple API key. So you can see here on this screen, I have highlighted the part with Palo Alto. So we just flick the switch and we paste in the API key from Wildfire, and off you go. Simple as that. There are other options as well. We can also integrate with other parts of Palo Alto, but that is not the main focus of today's talk. But I will give you another example here, which is the emerging threats. So for any of you who are subscribing to the threat intelligence from Emerging Threats, which is a Proofpoint company, by the way, we acquired that many years ago. So what was called MineMeld from Palo Alto can pull that information about bad IP addresses or bad domains and things like that, and it can be fed then into the firewall from Palo Alto. So this is just an example of another integration point where we also have integration between Palo Alto and Proofpoint. So this was what I was going to show you and talk about today, just stressing the fact that we really need to build out an ecosystem to make use of the various types of security devices that we have in the environment. And by that, I'd like to hand it off to Morten. So I will just stop my sharing now.
Hi and good morning, everybody. My name is Morten Athen. I'm an SC for Palo Alto Networks in Norway, and I'm going to take over from Mikael and talk about our side of the story. So can you see my presentation, guys?
Yes, perfect.
Very good. So Michael has talked about Proofpoint, and I'm going to talk more about our Wildfire sandboxing technology. So Proofpoint and Palo Alto better together. It's two great technologies that can cooperate very good, and you can get more out of your investments and better security. So Michael showed this slide earlier. It shows how the integration works. As I said, it's about just the easy API key that we share, and you're up and running. So what's Wildfire? Wildfire is a sandboxing technology that actually Palo Alto Networks acquired many years ago and has been working on and built better and better by the time. We receive files from firewalls, endpoints, cloud solutions, partner ecosystems like, for example, Proofpoint. And we do analytics on all unknown files, and we do a static and dynamic analytics, and we do machine learning. So we do check documents, binaries, archive files, scripts, flash, web URLs, also, and so on. And every customer that have the Wildfire license in Palo Alto Networks are protected by this, and it gives a quick analytics and a verdict that is shared with all customers having a Wildfire license. But what we see is also added to the standard signatures that are updated in a more not so frequent, but in the threat protection signatures. We also look at SMTP traffic and POP3 and URL and in the sessions that we see on SMTP and POP3 traffic. So the history of Wildfire. In 2011, we saw 9 million different malwares. Mostly PEs, and our sandbox technology was based on Windows XP. And we received files from our next generation firewalls, and we did the dynamic analytics. So we had updates, wildfire updates every 24 hours, new signatures. The year later, in 2012, we did see 24 million samples, and we started to integrate with a lot of different vendors. So we had like 50 plus integrations then. 2014, we did see 205 million different samples. We also added support for PDFs, Flash, Office documents and files, email links, and Androids. And our sandboxing VMs were now running also Windows 7 and Android. We also got our Aperture integration and Traps. Traps here is today what's called Cortex XDR, which is our endpoint security suite. And we had more and more integration. We also started with dynamics, static analytics. And we also see that updates were now supported every 30 minutes. 2015 increased to 870 million files. And you can also see that this is the year we started integration with Proofpoint. 2016, 2.2 billion different malware samples, and we also started to support jar files and even more integrations. And we also added machine learning in our Wildfire cloud. And updates are now available to the firewall every 15 minutes. 2017, 4.4 billion samples. We also support for archives like 7-RAR. We also do support Mac OS X and Linux ELF files. And our sandbox was now extended to Windows 10 and Mac OS X and Linux. And we also added bare metal analytics also on Mac. So you can do bare metal analytics on evasive malware that detects they are running in sandboxing technology. In 2018, we did see 6.3 billion samples. We also now can evaluate scripts and other more pattern matching and so on. And updates are down to 5 minutes. 2019 and 2021, you see the increase up to 11 billion and 16 billion plus. And the firewalls are now updated to a 0 delay real time. If we see a new malware and we detect it as malware, we update the firewalls right away, or the clients or software using our Wildfire technology. So we can see how the graph is going up. This is just growing more and more and more. So we have Wildfire sites all over the world, UK, EU, in the US, in Asia, and so on. All sites are SOC 2 compliant, and we also have GDPR compliant data centers. All data is locally encrypted and traffic is also encrypted. So your data is safe with us. So why do we need the sandboxing technology? You can see here, the attacker only needs to be right once. You need to be right every time. And we know that there are over 330,000 new zero-day malwares every day. That's more than 1,000 malwares every 5 minutes. And to be able to keep up with this, you need technology, and we need to share what we learn all over the world. So if one customer in the US see a new zero-day and we run it through a sandbox and we can say it's a malware, we share that information all over the world, and we share it also to Proofpoint. And with the Proofpoint integration, what Proofpoint sees in emails coming to them and running it in their sandbox and also sharing it with us, we help each other all over the world. So how do we do this? There are two ways to do this. You can stop and inspect all traffic. That's very common use in SMTP servers, because you can get the email, you can scan it and wait for the verdict and then release it or quarantine it. In the firewall, we need to do a more quicker technology because we cannot stop all the files or all things happening. We need to do it on the fly. So in the firewall, we prevent known bad and inspect offline. So in the firewall today, it's usually how this is done. It goes to Wildfire. We do DNS security, partner integrations, and so on. Usually, file protection is updated every 5 minutes, URL protections every 1 minute, and DNS protection is usually instant. But with Palo Alto, we have now deployed machine learning on our firewalls, also the virtual firewalls. So we do machine learning in parallel with sending the unknown files to our sandbox in Wildfire. We also do inline machine learning. So we will get instant protection on both files, URLs, and DNS. So when we get an unknown file through our firewall, we will do our machine learning evaluation on it, and 95% of the time we will stop it correctly. But to be sure, we send it to our Wildfire for parallel analytics and to get offline 100% sure verdict. And the Wildfire analytics also helps us train our inline machine learning so we can get that knowledge down to the firewalls again to do even better learning, machine learning treatment of traffic. So these are some Wildfire statistics. We have over 42,000 customers all over the world. We have a year-over-year growth of 83%. Yeah, most files are stopped with machine learning on the firewall based on knowledge gained by Wildfire. And we see a lot of IOCs coming in that we share on our IoT technology suites and so on. And we see 300 million samples every month, and so on and so on. So this is what Wildfire is. And I want to go back to Proofpoint integration and so on. In my previous job, I was a customer of both Palo Alto Networks and Proofpoint. So I, as a customer, has done this integration, and it works perfectly. So we I have experience with McAfee, Brightmail, Trend, Ironport, and so on. But back then we decided to upgrade to Proofpoint. We had help from a Proofpoint technician who was sitting in Belgium, and we did the installation in 2 days, and we got everything up and running. We got all the policies running. We got the integrations running up. We had the Active Directory integrations and all the spam filters tuned. And we also did the TLS SSL integration. So we had that also set up. And with Palo Alto Networks, we always recommend customers to use SSL decrypt. So I implemented SSL decrypt off the traffic going to the Proofpoint rig. So that was also working perfect. So that would help the firewall stop all unnecessary traffic before it hits the Proofpoint servers. So it will also protect for exploit prevention and so on. So SSL decrypt with Palo Alto firewall in front of Proofpoint works very well. The API integration works very well. So I have only good experience with Proofpoint, isolated, but also together with Palo Alto Networks. So, yeah. For most of you that might not know Palo Alto that much, we are mostly known for our firewalls, next generation firewalls. It's under an product umbrella called Strata, the yellow on the left. But we also have a lot of other products in our portfolio, like Prisma Access, Prisma Cloud, SD-WAN, our Cortex XDR client security, our XOR suite for automation and security orchestration. And we have all those subscriptions at the bottom of the page, like DNS security, threat prevention, advanced URL filtering, the wildfire, IoT security, global protect, and so on. So Palo Alto has become a much bigger company than just selling physical firewalls. We do complete IT security wherever your data resides. If you have your own physical data center, or if you are born in the cloud, we do everything. And we are in the Prisma Cloud. We do also CI/CD protection, API security, Kubernetes, and serverless protection. So we can help you in any way, and especially together with Proofpoint, we can do a great job together. Thank you very much.